Now that the latest episode of She-Hulk has gone by, I really wanted to delve deep into my overall thoughts on the program. Despite its ups and downs, I consider the series a win. The performances of the main cast were fine, however, the clear standout here is Tatiana Maslany, who provides a wonderful performance as Jennifer Walters, also known as She-Hulk. Maslany carries the show just by pure charisma and charm alone. I enjoyed the show, although it wasn't perfect. I believed it accomplished what it set out to do, which was to endear us to this character and get us excited for her story down the line. However, there's still two major issues I noticed, which has since become a pattern in most of these Disney Plus Marvel shows since they've debuted, with the same plague also being caught by She-Hulk. So don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and join me in this Pulp Thoughts on She-Hulk and the missed opportunity of another great Marvel show.
Feels like somebody's lighting my fire.
Now, Marvel shows have ranged in quality, both in its approach from the various networks they've been placed on, to the streaming services they've popped up on over the years. However, Disney Plus has brought us some shows from the Marvel Cinematic Universe possessing their own style, structure, and concepts. The main issue that I've still seen with these shows, alongside other Disney properties, is the way in which these shows are presented. Now, I'm not a stickler for serialization or episodic. Every show caters to something different. Though the construction of the MCU's storytelling nature means every show is meant to add something to a character or the lore of the universe. However, ever since WandaVision, we haven't really seen the ramifications of these Disney Plus shows quite yet on the film side, outside of Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, as well as Black Widow, with Kamala Khan being the next character to jump from television to film in the upcoming 2023's The Marvels, sometime in the future. So let's truly delve into the first major issue.
Cousin Brucey saved my life with a gamma-packed blood transfusion. You heard right, gamma-packed, because he's not just a man, he's the man.
The structure of these shows have done this weird thing where they try to get you on board with the concept between the first 3 episodes, then the next 2 are kind of like filler, semi-world building episodes where we get to know the environment of our protagonist and their day-to-day life. Then the last 3 episodes are where a story relatively begins to take shape, with most of the main story playing in the background in the earlier episodes. This structure has been damaging a lot of momentum with many of the Disney Plus shows, especially the MCU ones. Now I understand it, new characters, new world, we have to know who's in it and why. But in the grand scheme of things, we should be able to know everything through the lens of our main protagonist, which in this show they do a great job of by letting us see She-Hulk in her element from the opening start. However, the show's lack of balance between its sitcom procedural concept alongside its superhero story roots varies, because throughout most of its runtime it feels the need to be both when it could have been one of those things with elements of the other. And you could drastically feel this with episodes like the Asgard Elf one, the Magician one, or the Trademark episode. Episodes that meant very little for the sake of the story but were in line with the concept. Now, the first 3 episodes of She-Hulk really hit their stride as many Disney Plus shows do, but then it just kind of fell into this lull. And I cannot tell you how many times I watched this show and felt like the episode was just starting to get even more interesting, only to have the credits roll on me. Then I'm sitting here like, really? That's all? Always making it feel as though some of the episode is still missing. It also doesn't help that the Marvel shows end on the weirdest notes, like the store explosion in Ms. Marvel, or the penultimate episode of She-Hulk. It's a bit jarring and something that I'm sure the next phase will take into consideration to fix. However, I'll say this, although I wasn't a huge fan of the content within each episode, they did nail the promise of the premise in my eyes, as the pitch for this show was an Ally McBeal-esque superhero show. Although I think the pitch they gave wasn't the only pitch they tried to execute, which leads me to my next point.
Cool.
Now, this one is a little bit tricky, so I will be giving a light spoiler warning for this next part. I won't be mentioning every detail, but I do want to get into specifics. So here's your final warning. Great. After rewatching the series and watching the newest episode, I feel as though the show lacked a bit of focus, in the sense that it wanted to be a character study, but also wanted to be a procedural at the same time. Now, sometimes that can work for a show. Just look at its inspiration in Ally McBeal, a show that broke the fourth wall and was about a lawyer working in a Boston law firm with other lawyers whose lives and loves are eccentric, humorous, and dramatic. McBeal was a show that was able to be a procedural and a character study because it had a longer episode count per season, which gave it more time than the 8-episode, 20 to 30 minute show we find ourselves in here. If we forget the structure for a moment, I just wanted more effort put into the storyline of Jen and She-Hulk. Not only professionally, but personally. Every character we followed in the early days of the MCU had something hidden underneath their surface to help us understand who they were as characters and root for them in their fight for personal change. Tony was a war profiteer who saw firsthand what his weapons were doing. Hulk was a man who was afraid to live that he began to lose sight of what he initially fought for, while Thor was an arrogant prince who believed himself above anything else. And Cap was a man who sacrificed himself for all that he loved. These characters were given journeys for us to really get to know them on a deeper level. Unfortunately, this show doesn't get the same chance because of what it would go against.
How's this hot stuff?
Earlier, I had mentioned serialization versus episodic and the nature of the MCU. I also mentioned the show we got isn't the only show the writers really wanted to make. I think that She-Hulk was meant to be a marriage between Ally McBeal and Fleabag. Now, if you've never seen Fleabag, go watch Fleabag. The reason I bring this up is because Fleabag is a show that deals in the same character crisis we find Jen in at the start of the show, a lonely woman who longs for more in the midst of a quarter-life crisis. Now, on paper, the premise could sound boring, but the story you could write from that alone is tremendous. In the show, we have a situation where someone uses a godlike creature as a shield. Because she worries no one will acknowledge her true self, when in reality, I would have loved to see the concept in reverse, where she's so in love with being She-Hulk that she forgets about Jen. Now, the reason could be anything. Maybe the reason she forgets about Jen is because Jen could have been struggling, learning how to accept both sides of herself the way Hulk did in Endgame, except we get to see it from an emotional level, not a scientific one. I loved when the show discussed what the character has gone through, although in retrospect of the scene, it could have obviously been handled better, but I love the idea of the statement because that's what the show should have been about. And I think it just felt so restrained by its concept that the story wasn't able to naturally play out.
Color's good, but the toot is wearing a little thin.
Now, just to put a bit more effort in myself, I would have loved to see Jennifer Walters' life before She-Hulk. Similar to the pilot of Breaking Bad or even The Sopranos, in the sense that we see this person go through so much BS in her life that she needs to seek out change. Maybe she's a lawyer that doesn't get recognized despite her talent, being given weak cases by upper management in order to keep her from shining among the rest. And maybe in her personal life, we see that her family considers her living in contempt instead of living to strive for more. Or maybe they expected her to do more by this point in which we meet her in the show, while they give kudos to her brother who barely just became a manager at some store. And then maybe we see her go on a date as Jen, and the guy just completely is not interested in getting to know her. Or on the flip side, maybe she connects with someone, let's say for the sake of the story, it's Pug. She meets Pug at that lawyer bar place, and maybe she sleeps with him. And by the end of the episode, we end with her in a good place. Then we go to episode 2. We meet her where we meet her in the pilot, and the same thing occurs, except this time we meet the other female lawyer, Amelia. And she's open to helping She-Hulk get familiar to this place, only to recognize that the man she slept with is Amelia's husband. And maybe we see the struggles she deals with as she tries to get used to this new job while continuing to hook up with Pug, despite him having a family and a wife. Because be it as She-Hulk or Jen, he makes her feel seen in a way she hasn't been seen in a long time. Now, just with that alone, we understand her main personal issue is insecurity, It becomes even more prevalent when she gets the She-Hulk powers and her career goes on a rise. Now the reason I bring all this up is because I wanted to see Jennifer Walters and She-Hulk get worse before she got better. I wanted to add some meat to the show and give her flaws that could have made her more human and less of a character. Maybe she drinks because it validates her to go out and do the wrong things that she does with this guy. I mean, you got the great Tatiana Maslany in the role, and don't give her enough to work with. Like Fleabag, we could have seen Jen use comedy to hide her pain, while still using She-Hulk as her external defense mechanism. I mean, think about it. Jen, knowing she couldn't get higher in her career without this freak accident, or knowing she couldn't take home a guy without being She-Hulk, should have made for some of the best personal character growth we've ever seen in the MCU. Little moments to show us that she's human, she's insecure, and wants to be loved, but feels like she can't because she just doesn't love herself. Then the show would be able to show us her best side and the actions she takes to do better, taking those steps every day to think about how she could be a better person. That is what I felt we missed out on in this story. Nonetheless, She-Hulk was good, but I know it could have been great. Also, one more topic of discussion I had to bring up was the Daredevil episode, which I felt brought the superhero part of him into the MCU just fine. He was charming, witty, beautiful in his own nature as Matt Murdock usually is. Now the upcoming Daredevil show's length and episode count seems to vary from the previous Marvel Disney shows, which makes me genuinely interested to see what happens if a show like that does well to the rest of the MCU shows that come after it. For all we know, if Daredevil Born Again is good, we could get a She-Hulk season 2 that's 12 episodes long with a 40-minute runtime for each episode, you know? But that's just my thought, so let me know what you guys think. Did you watch She-Hulk? If you did, let me know what you thought about it down below. Do you agree with my comments or disagree? If so, let's have a nice, respectful conversation about it down below. Thank you all so much for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe for more videos like this, and I'll catch you all in the next episode. Too cool? Too sweet.